Respected dignitaries, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very, very warm good morning to each and every one of you. Pleasure having all of you here with us today. We are here to celebrate yet another extraordinary Unique Times Conclave, a collaborative effort by Regional Sports Center Cochin in partnership with Better Kochi Response Group, awakekochi, and Unique Times. Yes, so as I was saying, Pegasus as a team always aims at creating platforms that fosters both economic and social advancement. So the significance of such conclaves initiated by Pegasus is that we constantly bring relevant topics under fruitful discussion and consideration. So today, by bringing together individuals from diverse fields, we are addressing this very, very important topic: how sports can serve as a preventive measure against the drug addiction of our youth. Very, 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 very relevant topic, I should say. Let's come together to extend a heartfelt welcome to Advocate S.A.S. Navaz, retired IRS, Honorary Secretary RSC, and Vice President BKRG, as we invite him to deliver the welcome address. Welcome, sir.
Very good morning to all of you. Drug addiction, as all of you know, is spreading like wildfire amongst the youngsters. We at Regional Sports Center Cochin believe that sports is the best option to divert the attention of the youngsters, to distract them from getting addicted to drugs. That is the main reason why Regional Sports Center Cochin, in association with Better Kochi Response Group and awakekochi, have taken this initiative to organize this, not only this conclave is mainly is an awareness program. It'll be uploaded in the YouTube for your kind of information. But we have launched an anti-drugs campaign. We have formed a subcommittee. We have very passionate volunteers in the subcommittee. Most of them are members of the awakekochi group. Of course, we get all ideas and tips from Better Kochi Response Group too. We have representations from Better Kochi Response Group, awakekochi, most of the principals, representatives of the teachers, PTA, and some of the students. This is a very small and elite crowd attending this conclave. And we are very fortunate, I should say, to rope in Honorable Justice Ramachandran to deliver the keynote address as the chief guest. So I'm not taking much time. I just want all the parents and the teachers to act as volunteers in this campaign against drugs, to bring the children into sporting activities. I know that the government schools lack infrastructure, and we have been promised by the multinational companies, corporates like Shipyard and cial, that they will give us funds from the CSR to build up infrastructure in government schools. But private schools, I've seen that, I'm sure that they are having enough and more infrastructure for sporting activities. Only thing is they will have to motivate the children to indulge in sporting activities. RSC plays a pivotal role in providing coaches. We have already formed panels in appointing coaches. We are keeping the panels ready as and when the schools require. We will send the coaches to the schools. But we will give priority to government schools and government-aided schools. That's what the CSR funds, rules says. So this is it. I'm not taking much time. We also promise that once the child is identified, his talent is identified, they will be taken to Regional Sports Center for advanced coaching. They will be given free coaching, especially for children from the government schools and those who are financially weak. So with a word, once again, to the parents who focus more on taking the children for tuitions. I was asked in one of the schools recently, they were asking me, how do we find time between the tuition classes and the sports activities? So I want to tell them that without good health, sports has a lot of advantages, and having good health is one of them. Indulging in sporting activities will refrain the child from knowing what is drugs. First of all, not even tempted to have drugs. He will not want to know what is drugs because he is concentrating on his games, on practice, on winning the tournaments, etc., because that's an experience which we ourselves have seen. As a sportsman, I have myself experienced too. And drugs, as you know, the damage, what it could do to society, what we are hearing every day, the calamities happening to families, children getting violent at home, parents, some of them committing suicide during the shame that their children have taken drugs and they were caught and punished. So I don't want to take much of your time. We have very eminent speakers today, starting with our chief guest, who will give the keynote address. I don't think that anybody requires a special mention about Honorable Justice Ramachandran. We are very fortunate to have been associated with him for many other social events, which includes the felicitation given to the firemen during their operation, which was successfully conducted. And Justice Ramachandran was the chief guest. It was a very good occasion. And the firemen were also thrilled and happy to have Honorable Justice amongst them for that function. So on behalf of all of us in Regional Sports Center, on behalf of members of the Better Kochi Response Group and awakekochi, I take pleasure in inviting and welcoming Chief Guest, Honorable Justice Ramachandran, to give away his keynote address. Please, sir.
Morning. This perhaps would have been a day like any other, but we know it's different today. We have lost a very eminent citizen. The state is in mourning, but then I believe that this conclave would be the greatest tribute that you can give to anybody of his stature. In fact, in the morning I asked Navaz whether there was any move to keep aside this conclave today. But then he told me the same thing. He said, this is perhaps more service to his memory than anything else. And I believe so. We've been hearing about the canker of drug addiction for a long time now. I myself must have spoken about this at several occasions. People who have heard me perhaps would hear me use the same phrases, the same concepts here also. But then, as I said, I think Vivek was there for that program. He invited me at the IMA. I said, we have a duty to keep speaking, to keep speaking. If you speak 100 times, perhaps one person may hear us. So we have a duty to speak. And I believe that where we have a duty to speak, silence is a crime. We have young children also here. They are the flag bearers of the message. I have said this about other school students where I've had the honor of addressing them. So without much ado, I was looking at the topic. It's sports and drug addiction. I would say sports against drug addiction would be a better way of looking at it. Because drug addiction is something which is so ubiquitous that none of us can now say that we are not aware of it. It is really permeated. I'm not going into the details or the statistics which I have personally. The earlier excise commissioner, who was a brilliant officer, he has given me a compilation of a study, which I don't think has been made public as of now. And there are some startling details there. So this is not a problem that can be now brushed under the carpet. It's just beyond all that now. I do not know the reasons. I've been told many permutations as to why this has now reached this kind of proportions. I do not know whether they can be relied upon. But among them, one of the researchers told me that COVID has had a real impact. They say that there was a lot of isolation among students. And this was something that was inevitable. They normally say that there is nothing called necessary evil. But the isolation in the COVID times was perhaps one that could be brought within that phrase, because normally they say what is evil is not necessary, and what is necessary can't be evil. But this, unfortunately, was perhaps one of those very, very exceptional things that can be brought into that ubiquitous phrase, that oxymoronic phrase. Now, I'm not sure if this was the reason. Whatever be the reason, we have had a realization that this menace is now here to stay for some time. Is it the availability of the drugs that has really gone up? Or is it that we have started thinking that consumption of drugs is not that big a deal? I think even when we were very young, drugs were available, perhaps not the kind that you see these days. We had marijuana pretty available, I know that. But then there was a social taboo against use of that. We wouldn't dare use it because we were sure to face the backlash. So somewhere along the line, I think I should ask the students also, do they really think that among those who are experimenting into all this, is it something that they feel is stylish, is fashionable, something which is now acceptable by the society, or something which is not recognized by the society to be that great an evil? Whatever be the reason, I believe that the conclave can possibly find solutions to this, or answers to this. But for the children, I'll tell you, this is something which I've spoken last time when RSC invited me at their premises there. You see, sports is something which is not really properly understood, except in the competitive sense. Physical activity as such, it could be sports or any other activity, is something that promotes your brain so much that it is something which the students have never been told at all. This is a message that should go even to the kindergarten students. You see, when you start your physical activity, students, you do this all the time, and people who are in competitive field know this. When you begin your physical activity, it could be something as small as a walk or a small trot, you get that slight feeling of being happy straight away. This is something that is unmistakable. Go for a walk in the evening when you're very stressed out. Now, Navaz was saying, his parents asked, how do we manage sports along with, or physical activity along with tuitions? I'll tell you that question is completely out of place, and I'll explain. Now, what really is studies? Studies is where you challenge your brain. Now, your brain is a very, very remarkable phenomenon. It's not something that is organic. It's a phenomenon which has never been understood or studied. And I dare say there are doctors in this conference, I'm sure. None of them could tell you about more than maybe a percentage of what your brain is capable of. And this is the fact. This is a documented fact. So when you start your physical activity, it could be a walk or a small run or whatever. That feeling of goodness, you know why it begins? It's because the brain releases what is known as the brain-derived neurotrophic factors. Now, these are things which people, take medicines to get or to improve at one point of your life, where you feel so down, you feel completely depressed. Some doctors will tell you that is because the neurotrophic factors are low. Start eating this, start taking this, supplement and all that. But please imagine, these are things which are in your body. You just have to develop it. You just have to run. You have to just take a small walk. And the factors get improved. And when the brain-derived neurotrophic factors improve, I'm going slow so that you can always Google and find out the truth. This is not something which I'm saying. This is something which the researchers have established. And when the factors go up, you have something called the synapses in your brain. It's called the synaptogenesis. Now, synapses is where the neurons speak to each other. Then what happens? Your memory goes up. Your problem-solving capacity goes up. Your social articulation goes up. You become much more happy. You become much more content. You are a much better social person. And then your learning skills go up exponentially. So imagine if you give them 1 hour of tuition, combine it with an hour or two of physical learning, perhaps a tuition can come down to half an hour. Because their capacity, the capacity to comprehend and to understand and learn, goes up by as small a thing as a small walk or a run. But then it doesn't stop here. I'm sure you've all heard of something called the runner's high. As you work along, as you work up your body more, you get something called a rush. It's a high. It's called the runner's high. It's a documented phenomenon. You start feeling very nice. This is the same kick and the same high that you get from what we now call the drugs. That's because your brain starts releasing what is known as the endorphins. Endorphin is it's a portmanteau word for endogenous morphine. Endorphin. So it's the same morphine that you get from all these outside factors that you get within your body. It's called the endogenous morphine, endorphin. It is not that alone. You get something called the endocannabinoids. You have heard it right. Endocannabinoids. It's cannabis. And this creates more dopamine in your brain. And then you start feeling very, very happy. Why do you require drugs at all? Why do we need drugs? And imagine what you get out of this exercise. No after effects, only great effects. You become much better. You are much more sharper. You are far more articulate, you are far more comprehensive. What else can you ask for? What does a drug do on the other hand? It creates morphine, or it creates cannabinoids, or whatever the combinations are. And then what really happens? It destroys your brain. The effects that you get out of an exercise, as I said earlier, it's the opposite that you get out of a drug, maybe in a use of about maybe a month or two. It makes you pale, it makes you down, it makes you less articulate, it makes you withdrawn. Imagine the same compounds that create two different, completely anathematic kind of a reaction in your body. One gives you the high, one makes you very, very happy, one makes you a wonderful citizen. The other, with the same kind of combinations, creates a totally different person. How can we now say no to a physical activity or a sport? That is why I said to the parents who think that tuitions are better than physical activity, think 100 times more. You are completely wrong. Those students who have been exposed to physical activities like sports and others, they are far better students with much lesser effort on their academics. It is not that their brains are different. It is just that the way the brain functions is different now. We are all born with the same kind of brain. Don't be under the impression that I have a better brain than yours and therefore I am in a better place. No. My IQ is higher not because I am born with a higher IQ. There are possibly, we have heard about progenies, but I'm not speaking about them. Ordinary people like us, we have the same kind of brain. We have the same kind of phenomenon. But then it depends on the way you use it. So to those parents, this particular conclave, or those parents who are not here, who are watching on the YouTube or wherever, this particular conclave must be an eye-opener, must surely be an eye-opener. Another thing, this is the pharmacological and the physiological things that I was talking about. You know, when you are a sports person, you imbibe a kind of a spirit. And the fundamental difference between a sports person and a non-sports person is the manner in which you are able to accept defeat. As a sports person, if you have that, what is known very colloquially as a sportsman's spirit or whatever they call it, it is that capacity to accept defeat with grace. You see, these days, I have seen, we have had calls coming into our, even the High Court call center when we had it at that point of time, especially during the COVID time. And believe me, my personal number was also one of those emergency call numbers which we had put out in the net so that people could call or the students could call us. We were worried because students were getting upset with the smallest of things. They were unable to understand how to control their emotional turmoil, which from an adult standpoint of view was very, very trivial. They were unable to understand the repercussions of that isolation and the shutting down of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's because they were not able to go out, meet people, because after all, human beings are social animals. We are shut down in a cage, we become a totally different kind of an animal. We cease to be social, we become antisocial or asocial or whatever you call it, but it's a totally different kind of a person or different kind of a being. So this is where sports become very important, because here you generally react and interact with a group which are your peers or otherwise. And this leads to camaraderie friendships, which you cannot get anywhere else. I've heard, this is just a joke, I've heard that the best of men friends are classmates. I would think otherwise. I think the best friendships are born possibly at the sports grounds and the halls. I've seen students who have been friends all their lives only because of the common passion that they have. It could be a badminton, it could be anything else. And imagine the best of the countries which have produced the best of the players, footballers and all that. Believe me, it was a reaction to something like this, which they faced, which was completely endemic at that time. And they introduced sports into their younger generation. And they became the masters in that. And they have now taken the world by storm. They are the world leaders. India certainly can produce the best, no doubt about it. And our potential is right in front of us. But it's a manner in which we look at it. We believe that academics are more important. That's because we believe that students are expected to live in a particular manner as they choose for them. As we choose for them, sorry. But the point simply is different. The world is now changing. Students have much more options in front of them. We have to open the doors for them. Sports certainly is one of those major avenues that we can do for them, not only competitively, but as blooming individuals, as the young ladies and boys who are sitting here. I'm sure you expose them to a regime of healthy competition. You will understand that they become much better citizens. And it's not merely doctors, lawyers, and engineers that we want. We need the best of everyone. And this particular experience would be possibly it's actually a game changer, something which we have not been really exposing them to. Now, coming to the drugs again, sports gives you another facet. It makes you more focused. It gives you an aim. It makes you vie for a particular event in your life. This is something which is lacking in those students or those men who are not really, or those people who are not really into these activities. Most of the time, the young take up all these experimentation because they have nothing else to do. They find that their time is hanging very high on them, very heavy on them. They have to use it one way or the other. They do not know what to do with it. And many of them then start experimenting, perhaps because of peer pressure, or because it's found to be very fashionable or very au courant, as you call it these days. But unfortunately, you lose focus. Anybody who has taken to drugs, you can see from your own experiments, from your own your groups, you can see they have reached nowhere. It's a slow walk to their death. There's no doubt about it. There is no higher kick than life. And if you then subdue the life with external drugs and all those activities, all those elements, what is life then? You don't understand the kick of the life. You don't understand the pleasure of living. And when you do that young, you are nowhere. You have not even started your lives. You are so young that you do not know what to expect in your years later. But you start all this. You understand that your being is numbed. There is nothing in your activity which would then give you a high, except taking these drugs over and over again. There's another facet about drugs that all the students should be aware of. We are living in a very dangerous era because the drugs that you see these days are all chemicals, generally chemically distilled and very, very potent and toxic. Your friends may ask you, what is there in experimenting with the drug once? After all, it's just one time. But believe me, most of these drugs make you an addict the first time you experiment it. There is no first time in a drug. For example, the MDMA and all that you hear today. You try it once, you are an addict for life. It's that dangerous and potent. There are several examples that have come my way. I don't want to speak about it. They are all very, very, sometimes perhaps it's too sensitive for me to explain or to disclose here. In my job, I get a lot of inputs coming in my way. Some of them are truly, truly cataclysmic. I can't use any other word. Catastrophic, cataclysmic. I've seen lives wither away. Young lives wither away. All because they went into a party and experimented with the drug because one of their friends said, after all, it's the first time. Or where their food or their drinks were laced, particularly among ladies. I always tell my young friends whenever I meet them in schools or colleges, I said, if you want to go for a party, never keep your drink or your food unnoticed. Keep an eye on them. Because there are instances, even in Kochi, you don't be under the impression that Kochi is something, it's beyond all this. Even in this city, in the small city of Kochi, the Queen of the Arabian Sea, I've had instances brought to my notice where the drinks or the food of girls in parties were laced. I don't want to tell you the consequences. You can imagine the consequences. And believe me, it is beyond what you can imagine also. Whatever you may imagine, take it from me, it is one step beyond that. So I tell youngsters, I tell young ladies, particularly young ladies, it's no different for boys either. Please, if you go to a party, don't keep your drink unsupervised or your food unsupervised. When I mean a drink, I don't mean the alcoholic drink. I mean even a juice or a fruit punch or whatever you're given. So there are so many instances that have come to our mind, it has come to our notice. We are literally helpless because it is now for the children to understand that it is truly catastrophic and nothing else. And as I was saying, if sports can give you the same high as any other drug in the world, with no after effect but only great effects, why not? Why don't we embrace sports addiction and throw out drugs and the addiction that is associated with it? So let's go for sports addiction. Let's go for physical activities. I must confess, I'm not really one who has been into physical activities for the last few years, but we were as students. Meena Vishnathan madam is here. She was our teacher. She knows. Bharatiya Adhyapan at those days, we had at least 2 hours a day to play around. We had a great ground and we would be on our toes all the time on the ground, football or whatever. I used to play football those days. I can't even imagine me doing it today. But then those were the days. So that is where the substratum was created. And the schools, I think Mrs. Ramachandran and all those educational experts are also here. We have to have a culture of physical activity and sports. Unfortunately, Dr. Srikumar, of course, the pioneer, of course, somewhere along the line, we have tend to believe that academics is more important. There can't be anything further than that. Sports or the physical activity associated events are much more important than even academics, because if you forge a generation who relishes in these activities, you will see that the factum of excellence is much higher than ever before. I will close by just reminding you, all the students here, this is something which I speak in all my speeches. So please pardon me if you've heard this before. I always say that we have all heard about our Constitution. It's the highest law of the country. The Constitution has the fundamental rights, which you are all aware of. But there is something else which perhaps you are not aware of. It's called the fundamental duty. We are a right-based society. We talk about rights. Any litigation that comes to us, the litigant will say we have a right and therefore give us that right, enforce the right for us. But there is not even one case that has come to me in the last 7 years I've been on the bench where somebody says, I have a duty, I offer it to you. They don't do that. I'm just telling you something because the fundamental duties are couched in a single article, Article 51 capital A. It has 7 or 8 or 9 subsections. It goes up to J, so whatever, you can count it. And the last of the subsection, 51 capital A, J is the most important. It says that every citizen of India has a duty. It is a duty, it is an obligation to be excellent. Because the article says if every citizen of India is excellent, then the nation becomes excellent. What a wonderful concept it is. And when you have a duty to be excellent, how can you ever take drugs? Because drugs is an anathema to whatever we call as excellence. So constitutionally, drugs is something that we cannot even think of. We are not aware of this. None of us are aware of our Constitution. We do not think about our Constitution. I'm just trying to tell you that the availability of drugs perhaps is not something that we can address very easily. We have brilliant officers. I can see the officers sitting there in the customs and all those surveillance and all that. But then, availability of drugs perhaps is not something that we can deal with very easily. It is when each of you decide that you will not touch a drug ever in your life. As I used to say, I'm a complete teetotaler. I have not smoked. So if you can take that oath, this is something completely by choice. All my friends perhaps would enjoy one of these things when we are in a party or whatever. But then there is a choice. And that choice has really done well for me in the sense that I know that I am not dependent on all this. My brain works independent of all this. And I believe that this is one reason why I am in a position where I can take decisions without much of a problem. It's a problem-solving capacity that enhances when you are in physical activity. Please try. Just walk 10 minutes or run 5 minutes. Come back to your study table and start studying again. You will see that there's a marked difference in the manner in which you are able to deal with your academics. Try doing it. I'm not joking. And I've done this as a young child. When something would trouble me, there would be a hurdle which I can't cross when I was doing my, especially during exams. Miss, I'm sorry, but we were all students who would study in the last, on the 11th hour. So we would be just, bringing it all into our brains, the entire curriculum into our brains, maybe a day or two before the examinations. And there were times when we would think that I'm not able to understand anything. Take a break, go for a walk, go for a run, play a game, meet your friends, come back. You will see that the lesson opens up in a completely different way. This is the way the brain operates. Unfortunately, our children are not told the way the brain operates. So all the eminent ladies and gentlemen sitting here, please be flag bearers of the manner in which the brain operates. Please tell our children how important it is, and particularly parents. And parents have to be role models now. Most of the time, children don't listen to parents, or that is a complaint, that's a refrain that I've heard, is because we are not becoming role models for them. Turn role models, you will see that your children will believe everything that you tell them, because they understand that you do it for their own benefit. Thank you very much, and I hope that this conclave will open up new vistas to all of us, and we have very eminent people waiting. I'm sorry that I've taken all your time. It would have been generally only 5 minutes in my speech if it was a working day today. But fortunately or unfortunately for you, I get more time. So, and I appreciate your immense patience. Thank you so much.
It was our pleasure listening to you, sir. And I would love to thank you for setting the tone right for the conclave to just start. As you were speaking, I could relate to every word you spoke. Actually, back in school, sports were all about 100 meters, 200 meters, and relays, and district meets, state meets, and medals. It was just that, and more emphasis was always given to the academics. But I think parents, students, and all the authorities together should really bring a change. Whatever he said, we have to follow it to get a better response against what he was saying. Sports against drug addiction. So before we get to the conclave, I would love to invite on stage architect Gopakumar, an exceptional architect known for his profound contributions. This visionary professional has transformed Cochin's urban fabric through his extraordinary designs. With a keen eye for aesthetics and functionality, he has breathed new life into the city's architectural landscape. With his visionary approach and unwavering dedication, this esteemed architect continues to live an enduring legacy in Cochin's architectural realm. If I could request you to kindly speak to all of us, sir.
Run, walk, or jog. That's a message for everyone, not only for youngsters or older generation people. I run 7 kilometers every day. And you won't guess my age, but I'll give you a hint. I was our Honorary Chief Justice Devan Damendran's father's friend. So the rest of it I leave it to you. Regarding Better Kochi Response Group, I'm very happy that Navaz has asked us to join the great campaign of sports against drugs. It's one of the best campaigns. As Justice was telling, it's a duty of every person to be excellent. It has gone into my mind now, so that is a great message I will also pass on to all my friends. Better Kochi Response Group was started with the ambition to solve the city's problems, to make this city a better place to live. We have about 25 people gather every month and come out with programs and work with the government, go parallel with the government, instruct the government, advise the government to make this place a better place. One of the biggest problems we have noticed is definitely drugs. It has actually destroyed our society, and it's spreading so widely. We don't know where we are going to. So that's the biggest problem we have. Better Kochi is actually committed to stop this menace once and for all, but we don't know whether we'll succeed to the fullest 100% success, but we'll still give it a try. We have been, in fact, we have recently given, I think it again was inaugurated by Justice, stand-up scooters for the police, to reach every corner of the city faster so that you can supervise people and how they are moving about. But unfortunately, I don't know whether that's being used fully. We have still a doubt whether I don't see much of them on the road. We also were thinking of putting anonymous boxes in education institutions, which is one project which are just trying to do. We have a discussion with the police also, so that people can, without fear, can put a complaint or information on a trafficking. But the police officer said that they have an app or a website on which you can directly complain. But people are reluctant to go into website because of their privacy, whether they are not sure whether it will be traced. And anything can be traced these days. So they are still afraid if I give a complaint, so whether I'll be caught as a complainer. So that's a problem. So we thought of doing that. Sports definitely is the best thing which can happen to the new generation, which will keep their focus away from the drugs and all other illegal activities. Every person should try some sports or another. So BKRG will work with the government, with the other civil organizations, along with the RSC, so that we'll some or other bring down this menace to a little extent, at least. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, sir. And now it's time for me to set the stage for the conclave, Sports Against Drug Addiction. So this conclave is a beacon of hope. When I say it, I mean it. This would bring together groundbreaking ideas. This could ignite the flame of change. As we have the power to shape the future, let's make it better for the coming generation. So this should not be just another event, but this should be the event. And we have the right people to set the tone. I would now love to invite and introduce to you the esteemed moderator for this particular group discussion. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our esteemed moderator, Mr. mpjoseph IAS, as he graces the stage with his presence. With a remarkable professional journey in public service, encompassing significant roles such as sub-collector and district collector, as well as serving as a mayor of the Corporation of Cochin and holding the record for the longest tenure as Kerala's Labour Commissioner, this individual brings an abundance of experience to this distinguished gathering. His expertise and profound understanding make him an impeccable choice to guide and moderate this event. Let's give him a huge round of applause, and thank you so much for joining us, sir. And now to the panelists, I would love to invite, how can we not have Honorable Justice Ramachandran as a panel member? A distinguished judge currently serving at the Kerala High Court, the highest court of judiciary for the state of Kerala and Union Territory of Lakshadweep, with a legal career that began in 1991 under the guidance of his father, a renowned senior advocate. He gained extensive experience in various branches of law, including corporate, company, and constitutional matters. Notably, he and his father hold the distinction of being the first and only father-son duo to be designated as senior advocates by the High Court of Kerala. Throughout his tenure, he has presided over numerous significant cases, displaying a strong commitment to justice and upholding the rights of citizens. Once again, let's welcome him. I would also love to invite Architect Gopakumar. Moving on, I would love to invite Mr. vpnandakumar. He's a remarkable individual in the field of finance whose immense contributions to society have garnered great admiration. Holding the positions of Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer at Manappuram Finance Limited, he has played a pivotal role in elevating the company to become one of India's top 20 non-banking finance institutions. His visionary guidance and unwavering commitment to social responsibility serve as a profound inspiration to many. Welcome, sir. vpnandakumar, sir. He is right there. Dr. U. Vivek, a highly educated professional with a strong background in medical studies, specifically from Trivandrum Medical College, possesses exceptional skills in addressing a wide range of psychological concerns in individuals of all age groups. Specializing in psychological counseling and behavior therapy, This expert has taken a keen interest in child and adolescent psychiatry, de-addiction medicine, sexual medicine, and geriatric psychiatry and adult psychiatry. Let's welcome Dr. U. Vivek. Ms. Lakshmi Ramachandran. As an accomplished educationist, she possesses a wealth of knowledge and experience in the field of education. With a keen understanding of pedagogical methods and a passion for innovative teaching techniques, she has revolutionized education in countless ways. She continues to shape the landscape of education, leaving an indelible mark on the minds and hearts of countless students and educators alike. I would love to welcome her as well, Ms. Lakshmi Ramachandran. Pleasure having you, ma'am. Mr. V. Vivek, a distinguished individual with an illustrious career in taxation and excise, he has been honored with prestigious awards and commendation certificates for his exceptional service, including esteemed Presidential Award of Meritorious Service. He has also been actively involved in combating drug-related issues, leading to significant seizures of narcotics. His exemplary track record and contributions across various journeys is a true source of inspiration to many. And now I would love to request the moderator to kindly take over. And once again, welcome to all the panelists.
Thank you all very much. Maybe before I begin, we've lost one of our senior politicians, a former chief minister, former labor minister. I was labor commissioner here for some time, and then a very unique politician, Sri Uman Chandi is dead. I think it would be appropriate if you all agree with me to stand in a minute's silence in his memory. Thank you all very much. Honorable Justice Devan Ramachandran, my dear friend and chairman of the Manappuram Finance, Dr. vpnandakumar, my friend, Mr. Gopakumar, who has already spoken to you, Dr. U. Vivek, a psychiatrist from Renai Medicity. He's already been introduced. Lakshmi Ramachandran, educationist. I don't think I should be introducing her to you. Sri Vivek, one of the tallest here, not merely in terms of height, but I suppose when it comes to sports and this feeling that drugs must end. Head teachers from all across Cochin city. A lot of my friends are sitting there. Ashwini, Deepak, Kurian, Sri Bharathan, my senior in the IAS, and of course, Mr. Balachandran. And ladies and gentlemen, I think this is a very important conclave. Unique Times is doing it. It's a very unique conclave. We're looking at how sports can reduce drug addiction. I've been asked to moderate it. I don't know why I've been asked to moderate it. Maybe it's certainly not because I know anything much about drugs, certainly not because I've not tried drugs at all. I wouldn't even know what it is. I wouldn't understand what it is if I smelt it or came close to it or saw it. I've not tried drugs, so certainly I'm not qualified to speak on drugs after having tested it. And I'm certainly not a sportsman. I just was never in the playing field, much of an academic. So I'm neither a sportsman, I'm neither into drugs, so I don't know why I'm here. But sometimes, or maybe I'm here because, I don't know how many of you know, I'm the founder, chairman of the Regional Sports Center. I started it way back when I was district collector. I was founder chairman, unfortunately, only for 20 days or so. Navaz can correct me. But then I get that honor. But we did a lot of work trying to set it up. So perhaps that could be the reason. But anyway, it's an honor to be asked to moderate a conclave like this on sports and drugs, how addiction to sports can reduce your addiction to drugs. As I said, I wouldn't know the difference between charas or
MDMA, or these days I'm told there's something called a stamp, which you put on your tongue and you go on for 24 hours, completely oblivious to what's happening around you. In a world of sorrow or in a world of joy, depending on what you would like how you are oriented. What I'm told is that it provides you a lot of energy. If you're dancing, you dance. A normal person can dance with a DJ maybe for 30 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, 45 minutes. But if you're into one of these things, the stamp or MDMA, you can dance for hours together. You wouldn't know that you are dancing. It gives you energy. Maybe that's one reason that the youngsters are taking to it. But that shouldn't be the reason, as Justice Ramachandran explained to us. You can get this high in so many different other ways. In sports, is uniquely the right arena to get this high. You don't have to go to chemicals to get this high. You walk, you run, you swim. Yeah, I swim occasionally. That is when you feel that high which keeps you going, and it's a high which doesn't in a way blemish your mind or blemish your body. Unfortunately, what's been happening is that today our youngsters are so active on the social media that, as somebody said, the social media today is an echo chamber for drugs. That's where it is all happening. Unfortunately, we are not able to temper it. We're not able to control it. You can tap phones, but it's very difficult to move into a social media situation, a social media group, and monitor it effectively. And that's where I'm told that the kids, that the youngsters, and they're all into social media. As Justice said, they began it when we had COVID, and they're addicted to the social media, and through that they have become addicted to drugs. That's where it is happening, and that is responsible, apart from COVID, which paved the way for it, for this unbridled spread of drugs among amongst our children. One of the areas of social media which I believe is promoting drugs is gaming. The gaming community is increasing. Children are into games. When you go and buy a laptop, first they ask you, do you want a gaming laptop? No, I certainly don't want. But youngsters want it, and they're into it. YouTube is another medium. YouTube has these communities where youngsters try and get others into drugs. Reddit, I'm told, is one of those social media platforms on which there's a lot of talk about drugs going on, and attract youngsters into it. Streaming and live chat are some of the ways in which youngsters are brought into the use of drugs. And once you are in it, as Justice said, you are in it. You can't, unlike many of the others, you don't taste it for the first time and then say, okay, goodbye to it. You are into it forever, I believe. Now, these are the bad actors, the social media. Facebook has, comment section of Facebook, I believe, is used extensively to get small children in, kids in, youngsters in. YouTubers, we've heard about YouTubers recently. We heard about this gentleman called Toppi, what a name. But then they are, the fans that they have run into hundreds of thousands, into lakhs, into maybe, I don't know, millions. So when they say something, when they promote something, our young people, 10, 12, 14, 16-year-olds, they believe it and they take to it. Instagram, I'm told, is also one area where drugs are being promoted. And then there are things like the Telegram, the new ones. And in all these, identities can be hidden. A 70-year-old man can come in and pretend to be a 17-year-old. A 60-year-old man can pretend to be a 16-year-old and talk to the children and get them into drugs. And once you are in, you can never be out. So Reddit, Telegram, and I believe Signal is another area where it's on the rise. Signal is fully encrypted. So it's impossible for our police, for our law enforcers to go into it. It's very difficult to crack these conversations and discussions that go on in these groups. And these groups are really meant to draw young people in. Membership of these groups is also, I can't be a member, you can't be a member. None of us can be members. It's by invitation. And you're invited only, I can invite somebody if I know that person very well. And then it has to pass through various levels of scrutiny before you're invited. But once you're invited, you're in. Because the entire group is talking about how drugs, how good they are, how you can do this with drugs, what the various other drugs are, and so on. So these groups, which are unique groups where you and I or the police or the justice system or the enforcement system cannot enter is one of the areas where this is spreading. And often codes are used. You won't understand the language. I'm told there are various codes for some of these which, a tab is for LSD, and so on. And stamp, you know about the stamp a lot. Codes are used which, even if you're able to enter it, we are unable to crack these codes. Gaming platforms, I mentioned it already. Loco, I'm told, is a gaming platform which is used in abundance. The head teachers here and the teachers. I think you should be aware of what gaming your kids are using, your students are using. Another platform I've called is Twitch. What an appropriate name. Twitch is another platform where, a gaming platform where drugs are pushed. And I believe if you post comments on it which drives others to use drugs, then you get cash rewards for it. Which again, what's the use of getting a cash reward of 1,000 if you're going to pay 10,000 for your next dose of drugs? Now, unfortunately, this is what is happening on our social media, and there's a need for us to be able to respond to it. There's also a tremendous generation gap growing. I thought I didn't have much of a generation gap with my son. Of course, it's growing now. But today, the generation gap has become so narrow that a 16-year-old has a generation gap with a 15-year-old. That a 13-year-old has a generation gap with a 12-year-old. That's how generations are changing. It's not a 25-year generation gap anymore. It's a very small generation gap, and that's growing very fast. And that's also leading to I could have advised my son against drugs, but today a father cannot. A father would find it difficult. A mother cannot. They find it difficult because the generation gap is so huge, so wide. And then there is this new philosophy which has entered our thinking. Enjoy. Everything is meant for enjoyment. Life, I believe, is for enjoyment. Yes, it is. But then you take it so much forward that your enjoyment is a brunt for society. Your enjoyment is pain for the others around you. I've heard this song 100 times. I don't know whether it's a song or not. It's my life. It's certainly not my life. I cannot live alone. I have to live with all of you. I can't get my food, my drink. I can't get my water, I can't get my electricity, I can't get anything if there aren't people around me, the society around me which provides me these things. So this whole wrong notion that it's my life. It's not my life, it's everybody's life. It's your life and my life and all our lives linked together. You can't pull yourself out of society. You won't be able to drink, you won't be able to eat. Maybe you can breathe. You can't have doctors. You can't have nurses treating you when you are in an accident, and you can't drive on the roads. You need the police, you need the judicial system, you need everybody, the doctors, the engineers, everybody. So this whole idea that life is meant only for enjoyment, and taking this to another level, I think is also putting us back. Life, certainly you should enjoy, I'm not saying against it. But to think that it's my life and I can do anything only to enjoy it, I think is something that will kill society in the future. And that's the new normal, unfortunately. The new normal is not to have any guilt feelings at all. When I was a child, I had a lot of guilt feelings. When I was a youngster, even today I feel guilty about so many things. But today the whole push is that anything that you feel is okay. You need not feel guilty. Justice Ramachandran spoke about our duties. Our duties mainly comes in because nobody can have rights unless others have duties. I cannot have my right unless you have your duties. You cannot have your rights unless I have my duties. So we cannot live all alone in a world. We cannot live all alone. So the new normal is this, no guilt, do whatever. Do what you feel. Inhibitions are coming down. And that, unfortunately, is leading to a lot of strange things that we see around us. I'm scared today if somebody brushes against my car. I let it be. Because if I stop, I don't know, he may be on drugs, he might pull out a knife and stab me. Traffic offenses go up because people are on drugs and driving. So everything has become okay. The new normal, everything is okay. Killing is okay. Stabbing is okay. Abusing others is okay, which is the least of the things. Beating up others is okay. Stealing is okay. Making money the wrong way is okay. That's been okay for some time, but today it's much more. Drugs give you that high where you think you are on top of the world. Even killing for a few rupees seems to have become okay. Then, of course, there is the addiction to porn among young children. I believe it's reached unbelievable levels. And that takes you onto drugs. Porn leads you to drugs. It's available, and it's not the normal one-on-one porn, I believe, anymore. It's very porn which we can't even think about. Sinister words, rape, gang rape, rape and murder. These have become things that children see. And that leads them to drugs. And they want to experience it. And the other thing that's happening so much these days is when two consenting adults film themselves, and later one of them posts it on the social media, open to blackmail, and that's happening in a big, big way these days. All this is in a way feeding to this need for drugs. The beach culture that we have. We had a very village culture until 10, 15 years ago. Every holiday you went back to your villages. I studied in Madras at Chennai now, Madras then. My father would drive down and bring me to Cochin because he wanted me to see my village. Today it's not the village scene anymore. It's a beach culture. Everybody is on a beach, and that's where the drugs become available. So things are changing, and changing for the worse. And of course, the availability is going up along with this. The collector is not here, the commissioner is not here. I would have loved them to ask them, how is this becoming available on such a big scale? Where are kids getting it? I'm sure some of you will be able to answer, our panelists will be able to answer. Where are the accessibility points? And why are the accessibility points so widespread? How can they be identified? How can they be neutralized? These are very serious questions. Drugs in schools. You're all here because we have this threat of drugs in our schools. And I'm told, correct me if I'm wrong, I was told when I was talking around about this, that there is more drug addiction in our government schools. And unfortunately in private schools. And I'm not speaking of private schools, all private schools, I'm sure some of it is very strong. But schools that are affiliated to any religious organization, Bharatiya Vidya Mandir, for example, or Chinmaya Mission, or our convents that's run by the priests and the nuns, or schools run by Islamic organization, there are much less drugs there, I'm told, than in private schools, than in government schools. I'm not sure about it. I think our panelists will be able to tell us whether this is true or not. If that is, it only means that there's a lack of oversight in our private schools. There's a lack of oversight in our government schools. Because if there's less drug abuse in Chinmaya Vidyalaya or Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, that's because there's oversight there. There's monitoring there. When a child is found to be behaving oddly, he or she is called in and asked what's happening. That doesn't happen, unfortunately, in many other private schools. I have no names, but this is what I'm told. And that is a dangerous point because a lot of private schools, international schools are going up. And the numbers of children who may be addicted to drugs in them will be certainly growing up. And the parents are also here. You have a tremendous role to play. There might be a generation gap, but so what? It's our children. It's the next generation. You have to tell them. They might hate you initially, but they love you 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Some of our parents are scared to tell our children what is right and what is wrong. They're scared to tell, son, this is wrong, don't do that, do this. I think it's very important that you tell them what is right, what is wrong. To tell them that this is what is moral, that is immoral. This is what is ethical, that's unethical. There's so many head teachers here. I think all of you can make a change. And I suppose that is where the role of sports come in. Because sports, as Justice said so eloquently, can change the child's thinking. It's the addiction to sports that will kill the addiction to drugs. And that's where the sports in our school is very important. That's where we need to build more playgrounds. They say, I don't know which, the Second World War or whatever, was won on the sports fields of Eton. I don't know how far that's true, but there is a point there. You can win the battle against drugs if you promote sports. And that's where I must compliment Navaz and his team. In the Regional Sports Center, I must compliment Better Kochi, Gopakumar is here. I must compliment awakekochi and all the others who are here so that for what you're doing. I'm sure this discussion today, the panelists are all superbly eminent people. I'm sure they will add to our understanding of these issues, add to solutions, tell us what the problems and bring out the solutions. Thank you very much. I think with this little opening note, I think I've taken more time than I intended, but I think this is a topic where we must go into issues. I will request our panelists to come in and continue this discussion on how we can use sports. And I won't ask you to limit it to sports, but also to look at other areas where we can prevent, reduce drugs in our schools, in our colleges, amongst our young people. Let me request, I'll start with Mr. Nandakumar. Nandakumar heads a corporation, as I don't have to introduce him to you. Manappuram is one of the biggest financial institutions that Kerala has seen. So I'll request him to give us his views. To start up his thinking, I'll ask him I'll raise a few issues which perhaps as a corporate he can respond to. One issue is how can corporates like yours and others, not only yours, do to contribute to ending drug menace? And specifically, how can corporates promote this goal? Addiction to sports can end addiction to drugs. Corporates have huge staff. How can you and they're all parents or grandparents. So is there something you could do, companies could do amongst your staff and their children, a campaign of sports against drugs, as Navaz has so well initiated? Also, how can you encourage corporates, which a lot of CSR funds, we had a CSR conclave here a few months ago. How can you encourage CSR funds to be used for this initiative? Building up sports facilities, common facilities in schools and so on. How can you do that? I mean, these are 3 areas I suggest, but I'm sure you will have many others to address too. Thank you so much.
Let me congratulate Ajitravi, Mr. Navaz, and all others for organizing such a brilliant conclave here, because this is very important today, and also getting very brilliant speakers like Honorable Justice Ramachandran, Mr. Joseph, and all others who are present here. So, having heard this, I should say my experience. In the financial services sector generally, what we have seen, post-COVID, the frauds have increased. The financial services sector as a whole. Online gaming, that also is leading to the frauds. Sports, as the earlier speakers have said, is very important. We have done few things in sports. We have built 7 open parks in Delhi. In the most important places, in the public parks, we have built 7 open gyms, where you can see the people queuing in the morning in all the 7 parks in Delhi. And we have put a message also there against the drug abuse. We have also built more than 100 children's parks across the country, not only in Kerala, across the country, where the children are encouraged to participate in the sports. And also, there also we have given this message against drug abuse. We are from a village a remote village called Valapad in Thrissur, where we have built, there is a government high school there. There is a very beautiful ground, public ground. There, we have constructed an open gym, where this is just to encourage, yes. And we may be running the Olympic pool also in the same remote village, where the swimming pool, we have tied up with many of the local panchayats, have tied up with us. And during this vacation, the swimming pool couldn't admit all the applicants there in panchayats, because these are partly funded by our Manappuram Foundation and partly funded by the panchayat, where the swimming is, they train the young people, young students, etc., etc. And now we are in the process of constructing private ground for the use of public, where for facilities for morning walking and all these are there. These are some small things what we can do CSR side. Being a corporate, we have a great responsibility. This menace is a very serious menace, as we all have noticed now, because the children are induced into that. There is a peer pressure being created, etc., etc. As Honorable Justice also has mentioned, even soft drinks are laced with these drugs. Even unknowingly, even the girls and boys, young girls and boys, are pushed into using this, and where this is becoming an addiction. So I feel like, as you know, the CSR is mandatory. It has become mandatory only in India. Around the world, you can't see in any other countries where the CSR is mandatory. Anyway, CSR is mandatory. Now, beyond CSR also, many of the corporates are using funds, etc. And against this drug abuse and promoting sports, we should definitely, corporates should be encouraged. We had a conclave earlier about CSR conclave. We should also have a conclave where the CSR, we can promote sports using CSR funds. That will be a good idea. So this is a good beginning. Unique Times and others, the Sports Council here, should take the lead in promoting sports against drug abuse. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nandakumar. Thank you for your ideas on how to use CSR funds for encouraging sports as a means of reducing drug addiction. There was one other point which, if you have 2 minutes, if you can take some time, how would you use your own staff? They have children, they have grandchildren perhaps. How would you use your own staff to discourage the use of drugs and encourage sports as a means of de-addiction?
For the last 10 years, we have been encouraging sports. We have sports day also, where we have nearly 50,000 employees across the country, working in our 5,000 and odd branches, where we promote sports. Not only our employees participate in that, we also encourage our customers to participate. And in this, we have taken a lead in promoting a message against drug abuse.
Thank you very much. I'm sure all of you head teachers, students, and all the others would have a lot of questions to ask Justice Devan Ramachandran, ask Nandakumar, but is it okay if we first go round all the panelists one time so that you can ask questions to them? If that's okay, then I'll ask the educationists on our panel, Mrs. Lakshmi Ramachandran. She of course needs no introduction. What I ask her is, I'll just to sort of, she doesn't need me to fill up her thinking, but still I'll just put a few points across on which she can try and respond. How should schools get involved in this campaign? How can all the schools here and all the others get involved in this campaign? I think it should be more than a campaign. A campaign means something which is for a short time. I think it should be something that's part of school life. So how do you change this from a campaign into something that's part of the school life? How do you ensure that your students, our students in schools, do not take to drugs? Do you think we should bring it into the school curriculum? Will that help? That is another area. And any other options you may like to suggest. Finally, I don't know whether you'll be able to answer this. I was thinking I'll ask the police commissioner, where are the kids getting it? Where are they getting the drugs from? So these are some things I'll throw at you. Yeah. I'll leave it to you to either answer them or add your own. Thank you.
And thank you for this opportunity. I'm delighted to be part of this very august panel. And it's particularly joyous for me to see that some of the children who are under our tutelage are present here this morning, and some of my esteemed colleagues and seniors. So, of course, it's evident that there are no microwave solutions, quick fixes for anything that we are talking about this morning. And I'm glad that we are talking about a process and a journey rather than a sporadic campaign or just marking a day in a calendar saying that 26 June, an anti-drugs day. I am reminded as I sit here of an African proverb which says, it takes a village to raise a child. Unfortunately, and as our esteemed moderator of the panel, Mr. Joseph suggested, that village has disappeared. And the very fabric of everything that we held so close and so dear is now shaken. Parents, the extended family, members of the community, officials, teachers, all of us must tune in to what our youngsters really are about. And actually, long working hours, fragmented families, COVID, which did its share, all that put together, I think our children are seeking answers. And unfortunately, in the absence of role models, and unfortunately, in the absence of other avenues, perhaps they think drugs are a panacea for anything that they seek. I think it's Mr. Joseph who said that, children and everybody is now talking, the general trend is respect my space. I need privacy. But actually, a home was a safe sanctuary. There was excellent communication. The minute you came back from school, your mother asked, "How was your day? So what all did you do? And can I have your tiffin box?" And slowly, things would come out of the bag, and the mother would say, "Hey, I noticed an extra eraser in your bag. Where did that come from?" And mothers and parents and schools connected better. It was not us against them. We were all working together for the children under our care. When that happened, very soon, and this happened from grade 1, the generation gap will set in if you start this in grade 10 or 12. But if this is a habit from the time our children are very young, and then there is a clear-cut communication between the parents, extended family, grandparents, then I think children felt safe and secure. Secondly, I think, we all teachers began with the dictum, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So right from circle time in kindergarten, when children played every day, and as they grow up, where physical fitness, sports, all that is encouraged and I'm happy to report, most schools now don't even call it extracurricular activities. I am happy to report that many of our schools have a vice principal co-scholastics, which shows that sports and cultural activities are as important as academic activities. Half a day is devoted certainly to all these activities where every child can participate and no child is left behind. That's another thing. And I wanted to share with you another thing which you referred to, that as parents, you might have to take tough decisions. I was just sharing with a colleague here that Irma Bombeck, the humorist American writer who wrote a brilliant book called Motherhood, the world's second oldest profession, she says, "Someday I will tell my children." And she says, the toughest thing that a mother does is even when the child says, "I hate you," the mother says, "No." So I think if all of us come together and if all of us decide that we are going to be there for our children, be there not because we want to pry, but be there for them because we want to support them through everything that they're going through. And if we can build resilience in them and communication, I think to a large degree we can certainly do, from the point of view, maybe it's not a generic thing that you can do, but every home can become really a place from where life-changing attitudes can develop. And as far as what can schools like ours do, if we have a privilege of having excellent infrastructure, I think it is our bounden duty to share with neighborhood schools our facilities, and I'm sure many schools like ours will be open to it. Our play fields are there. We already have an exchange program where our teachers go to neighboring schools to teach them the language. But on behalf of our school, I can say that our neighborhood schools are most welcome to come and use our facilities. And I think let 1,000 children bloom. Thank you.
I think you should applaud her. Why are you so reticent? Thank you so much, madam. I think your offer that schools in the neighborhood can come and use our facilities, I think that's a very important first step in getting children to the sports field. I think if every school did it, if every school who had sports facilities did it, I think it would not be 1,000 flowers, but perhaps 1,000,000. Yeah. Thank you so much. My last question, one you left unanswered. Yes. Where do the kids get it from?
I'm sorry, I do not have a concrete answer except what I read in the papers. We've had specialists like Dr. Vivek come and talk to our children. We've had policemen come, I think we had a young IPS officer the other day come and talk to our children. So a sensitization program is constantly on. But I think it would be wrong for me to cast aspersions on any one particular agency unless I'm sure. So I really do not know where they get it from. But of course, all the places that you mentioned, online, peer pressure, parties, or I'm told there are shops in the vicinity of the school. I've been scouring my school neighborhood. Fortunately, I don't find any. But anyway, I'm sorry, that particular question I do not have a clear answer to.
I think you've answered it, and I think there's a suggestion for all the head teachers here. Scour the shops near your schools. And if you find they're selling drugs, then come down heavily on them. I'm sure Justice Devan Ramachandran will also contribute to that, coming down heavily part of it. I'll move on now, questions after this. Mr. Gopakumar has already spoken to you, so I'll ask him to speak before Justice Devan Ramachandran, who will round up our discussions today. So I move on to, there are two Viveks here. There's a you Vivek, there's a we Vivek, you and we. I think that's what makes a fight against drug so very important. So I'll first go to you Vivek. He's a psychiatrist, as you all know. I think many of you will know him better than me. I've got a couple of points which you can work on or you can respond to, and add your points as well, Dr. Vivek. One of my points is, you see, I have always found, it's changing a bit now, but I've always found that we Malayalis are a very pessimistic group. We also always see the black side of things. We don't see the good side of things. Even when something good happens, we think this good happens because something bad is going to happen to us. It's a mindset. Does this feed into the use of drugs? Is one question I would like to put to you. Well, there's the other side to it. You know, I mean, sports is not free of drugs. There are a lot of allegations that there are drugs in sports, performance-enhancing drugs. How do we reduce that? How do we see that our children who takes to drug do not fall prey to drugs for sports and then to other things? So that is a thing. That's a point I'll put to you. Sports can it be used for de-addiction as well, or only for prevention? Finally, some countries, like the Netherlands and others, have legalized drugs. How does that help? Does that help, or does that stand in the way of a more wider use of drugs? These are some issues I'll put to you, but add whatever you think is.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you for inviting me over. Mr. Navaz from RSC, he invited me. Today is a working day for me, but I took leave because this is a core area for me, because everybody comes to me at a time of crisis. It'll be hopeless, helpless looking parents. They come to me when they have a legal issue. They come to me when they have a scholastic problem. The child is kicked out of school or caught with some drugs, etc. So So thank you for calling me, and awareness talks and awareness programs like this holds a very important thing. Let me start with a disclaimer. I look very tired today because I'm having withdrawal features. Last 2 days, I'm an addict, okay, but I'm a sports addict. So this Monday, I couldn't work out because of Wimbledon. Today morning, because I had to go to the hospital and do rounds, I couldn't. So I'm a little tired today. Anyways, one more thing. I studied in the same school as Justice did, Bhavan Elamakra, but I stayed at Valanjambalam. I went all the way to Elamakra because the ground was bigger. Okay, so in our times, sports was very important. Even now, I guess it's very important. And drugs is causing havoc in society. It's actually an epidemic, much more than COVID. Every day, I'm not a very experienced practitioner. I'm just like 12, 13 years into practice, but still, every week I get at least 5 to 10 kids between the age group of 15 to 25. And parents and teachers are the last people to know about their addictions. And initially it was like 80-20. It was 80% males, 20% females. But now it's turning. It's 60-40 now. And you won't believe it. Somebody said, higher government, nothing. It's there in all parts of society, from the government schools to the top schools here. Everybody, it's reached everywhere. The tentacles are everywhere. There is no socio-economic divide. There is no low, high. And somebody was asking, where do you get it? I work at a hospital called Renai Medicity at Cochin in Mamangalam. That kid said, where do you want it? Do you want it at Palarivattam, Mamangalam, Edappalli, or you want it sent home by Swiggy? It's available everywhere. So please don't be oblivious that it's not there. Most parents are in a denial. When they come to me, even when caught with drugs, no, my kid is not into drugs. They are in a denial. They're worried, like, if we tell something, will the kid do something, etc. No. Please be proactive, and things like sports have a very, very important role to get these kids off these things. Personally, I like the Justice and others people around in the dais, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I've never done so, but everybody around, including my family and my friends do, but I never started this because I feel I don't have the willpower for all that, so that's why I didn't. And sports gives me the same high. So why not do that? The questions which the moderator asked me, I think the first one was...
sports can also lead to drugs.
Yeah. So,
performance.
Yeah. So again, we get lots of kids, like the gym where I work out. I was surprised to see a 14-year-old lifting weights. I started lifting weights at 18 years because my father was very particular. Only after 18 do you start weights. Till then you can do cardio. These kids start using all these performance-enhancing drugs. It starts with things like whey protein, then moves on to creatine, then moves on to bigger things. So at the end of the day, the whole message should be, it is for having a healthy body, healthy mind, etc. So please don't use all these things, if at all. And I have very educated people, including doctors, very high-profile people, telling that their children use all these performance-enhancing things. Please don't destroy your body. At the end of the day, we want a healthy body, not something which destroys our body. So that's a big no. And I think the second question was...
I was asking you whether is the use of sports merely preventive, or is it also therapeutic?
Okay, so both ways. Preventive, definitely, because when kids are into sports, they don't have time for all these things. When you have a lot of time, and there are many kids who come and tell, I felt sad, I felt unhappy, or I have to be in the group. So when you are in a group of children who are playing games, it could be badminton, it could be swimming, it could be anything. You don't need to be a professional. I can tell you, at school, I played almost all games, starting with football, cricket, hockey, basketball. Finally, I decided I have to be in some team. That's when I stick to basketball, and I got into the school and the college team. But the thing is, children have to be inculcated into this, because you won't believe it. Can you just guess the age of a child who came to me for de-addiction? The youngest age. It was 7 years, second standard. Okay, so it's shocking, but the tentacles have gone so low. So catch them young, catch them at 6 years, at maybe first standard, second standard, introduce them to some sport. They needn't be a, Saina Nehwal or a Sindhu in it, or maybe a Neeraj Chopra, but introduce them into a sport so that gives them the same high. Like I just mentioned, that the most freely available antidepressant around, the most freely available thing is exercise. You do it, endorphins are released in your body, you get that high which drives you for that whole day. Today I'm tired because I didn't do my workout. So the thing is, when you introduce them to it at a very young age, it helps. Plus, another thing which I would always tell is they come to us during a crisis, but how can you watch for these warning signs? This is something which I always stress. All these schools call me for giving classes to children, but okay, it helps sensitizing them, but it's more for parents and more for teachers that you can see these changes in you. A sudden change in behavior, not going to school, getting angry for small things, stealing money from home, the private space thing, don't get into my room, smell from the mouth, eyes red, getting aggressive for small things, suicidal behavior. There are a lot of warning signs, red flag signs, which all of you can see in children around you, your children, etc. These warning signs should be a pointer that they're into drugs and some action has to be taken. I have seen certain cases where some are brought to my OPD and then they tell, no, we are in the, this is not mine, it was accidentally placed, etc. Parents also vouch for them, no, our kid never uses. I tell, okay, we'll get a urine test done. It's just a 10 minutes dip test, comes positive. It's usually weed, now it's MDMA, meth and other things. So some very smart kids tell, your equipment is wrong. It's so bad. And like Sir said, there are certain countries who've legalized it. It could be Netherlands, US, some states in US, etc. Even India is in discussion for all this. But see, all these kids who use drugs don't get addicted. It's true. But how do you know you're among the 10% who get addicted to it? Unless you try it. And one single use is enough to get addicted to it. I had a kid. He was not a kid. He was a youngster, I think he was into his MBA, 20 years. He went to Netherlands and he had a hash brownie. It was a brownie where cannabis, and he just took a bite. He had a depersonalization experience. He felt as if the whole world was hovering around, and it continued for days. So you really don't know which group you fall into. So stay away from this. I had another kid who used MDMA just once, and he almost died. He was almost going to a suicide attempt, and we just rescued him in time. The most easiest and difficult thing is to stop using it. If at all you see that these kids are into this, take treatment. The treatment are available. What parents, teachers are all afraid is the de-addiction will drive you mad. No. What these things do is, it causes irreversible, irreparable damage to your brain. And as a doctor, as a de-addiction specialist, I find it so difficult to treat because newer and newer things are coming. Things which I studied 11 years back in Trivandrum Medical College has become obsolete. Just maybe a month back, I had a patient on a Sunday. It's a free day for me, but I had to come to the hospital. He took MDMA and injected it IV into his bloodstream to get the high. It's so bad. So we had to find newer and newer methods to treat, de-addict, etc. So the best thing would be to stay away. If at all you get addicted, there are treatments available. The earlier, the better. I'll just stop it by a last thing. And one more thing which is constantly undiagnosed is this pleasure seeking. That instant gratification is seen more in children who have a problem called ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. These children are hyperactive, they have attention issues, they want everything fast in life. Life is not so fast. So with drugs, they get it. But an easier substitute is sports, where you get the same high. So if you can introduce them to sports, if we can distract them, etc., it helps. And most of these children from ADHD, they moved into something called conduct disorder in their adolescence. They lie, they steal, they get into the wrong company, they start using drugs, etc. Sometimes they come to us in some of these stages. I had a patient of mine, maybe 5-6 years back. He had similar issues. I told him not to. They refused to take treatment. He went to study abroad. He was actually down in the streets, and they had to get the embassy, etc., to bring him back. Even now, he refuses to accept things. So at this stage, it's so difficult. If you can treat them at a very young age, give them safer alternatives like sports, get them hooked to that, they'll never get into drugs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. U. Vivek. One of the things that you threw up when you said parents have a big role to play as well as head teachers, what struck me was this, I think you should be using forums like the Parent Teachers Association, which I believe is very active in most schools. I think that is a forum that can be used effectively to promote sports as an antidote to drugs. Perhaps a suggestion that comes up from what you said. Thank you so much. That was a very comprehensive presentation. You gave the psychiatric side of what drug addiction is all about. We move on to the Vivek, isn't it? Yes. He is 6 foot tall. How much? Much more than that.
6'5".
6'5". Oh my God. He is a basketball player. Am I right?
I was lucky to play for the country.
Yeah. And when Mrs. Lakshmi Ramachandran was talking, she said, we need models. He's a model model that young kids can follow. And I meant that...
So I was into RAM modeling, say, 5 to 6 years back.
Wow. And also as a model for children to
I'm trying my best with Navaz sir and team.
So I'm sure you got a lot to say. I believe, I'm not going into your career, but I'm sure people know it. I don't mean to mention it here. There are a few ideas I'll throw across which you can sort of focus on and then add whatever you have. Are there examples of successful sport-based initiatives and campaigns that have effectively prevented the use of drugs in young people? Are you aware of any? That's one thing you can touch upon. You can also touch upon how sports can help. It's been mentioned here often, but still from your perspective, since you're a sports person, how young people can develop healthy coping mechanisms and stress management techniques as an alternative to the use of drugs by the use of sports. And finally, how the Regional Sports Center is doing it, but how sports associations, we have Cricket Association, Badminton Association, so many associations, state-based, district-based and so on, how can they are into various good activities, I'm not going into that, but how can they be roped in for this purpose? Similarly, coaches and mentors, you're a mentor yourself, as positive role models against the use of drugs and use of sports as an antidote to drugs.
Right, sir. Because two Viveks are sitting here, I'll just quote Swami Vivekananda. Probably our parents must have been inspired from Swami Vivekananda. The quote says, "Arise, awake, stop not, until the goal is reached." So, being an officer with the Government of India Ministry of Finance, it was easy for me to book cases than to prevent it. The most difficult part for us is to prevent the spread of drugs among kids. So what is happening nowadays in Cochin City is, like what sir was saying, many learned dignitaries are saying, like cases have come up before all the agencies where kids have been into peddling or they are into drugs. So the initiative which is being taken by RC, awakekochi and Greater Cochin and Association is that we are trying to spread sports to schools in such a way that the kids go home tired. They won't have much time to think about some other activities, getting into internet, ordering things from the net, or getting some sort of friendship where they can be directed into peddling. So what is basically the idea of RC and the association is, there have been a lot of programs which has been held in Cochin, awareness programs held in Cochin, marathons, cycling, bike riding. The fact that we have to understand is, a drug addict will be sleeping at the time when a marathon starts in Cochin City. He will never be involved in any sort of activities which is against drugs. So what is happening is, the people who are into drugs, they are totally cut off from the society. They're not willing to participate in any programs. Like what sir was saying, what we have started is, we have started going to schools. We have started taking initiations to to organize awareness programs, to give awareness to the school principals, teachers, the associations. After identification, we take a next step as to bring them back to life, that is de-addiction. We have got associated with certain hospitals in Cochin. That is 100% with the help of Indian Medical Association and Indian Pediatric Association. So we have associated with a hospital in Karugutti. It's called Mindful Rejuvenation. And I have personally sent almost 6 to 7 kids who were in schools below the age of 15. Like what sir was asking me, what is the result that we got us? We were able to bring them out from drugs. The parents, like what Dr. Vivek was saying, they are not willing to come up saying that my kid is into drugs and I want to bring him back to life. Most of them take a denial stage. They deny that their kids are into drugs. So that is where we have come up with a urine test kit. A urine test kit with a drop of urine, we can identify 10 different drugs that has been used by a person. So what we are doing nowadays is basically awareness program in a way, then to guide kids into sports. So being a sports person, I know the positive side of sports. The pressure that we get from our daily life, that doesn't touch us because we go through bigger pressure in just 40 minutes of game. We have to face a lot of pressure, and that pressure is much bigger than the pressure that we get from the society. So for me, or for the sports person who are sitting here, who have come along with me, they know that sports is the best option where we can cut the kids either from drugs or from phone addiction or any sort of addiction that is prevalent among them nowadays. So like for the other question that you asked me, from where they get these drugs, I'll just mention about the most commonly seen drugs is MDMA. So what is MDMA is a white powdery substance. If it gets mixed with water, you can't identify with that the water's been mixed with MDMA. Smellless, odorless, tasteless. The item has been smuggled. I mean, it's been brought from Bangalore. In most of the cases, they get it for lesser price. It is just a gram costs 600 rupees in Bangalore, and it will cost almost 3,000 to 4,000 rupees in Cochin city. So what happens is, the initial stage, the kids are given MDMA. A sachet will cost from 3,000 to 5,000 or 7,000 based on the demand. It is given free to them, and after a period, kids, as we all know, they don't have any sort of income to buy it. They have been made peddlers. So a peddling gang, they'll ask him to peddle, take it to another spot or location, and from there, he'll be paid. There are cases that come across where he'll be given 2 or 3 sachets, he'll be asked to peddle, and that's how he becomes an addict. In most of the case, what we do is, when we identify a kid, we help him to rehabilitate. The latest initiation is, in 2 or 3 cases in Cochin, we were able to bring them to sports, especially football. So, though it might many drugs for enhancing the performance must be there, but it's not easy for a player or a person to get totally addicted into narcotic drugs and perform. That's not easy, because it can 100% create problem for his health. So that is the present situation, sir.
A few questions that came to my mind as you spoke. How do we catch the big fish? Most of these are small ones, aren't they? Where are the big fish hiding, and how do we catch them?
So there is no one single big fish. Even in smuggling, I was into anti-narcotics operation with the wing called Customs Preventive and DRI. Where there is a demand and where there is an income, people get into smuggling or into narcotics. So like what I was referring, in most of the cases, what we could find during an operation or after a search is that this drug has been smuggled in from Bangalore. What is happening in Bangalore is some African nationals are there, settled in some places in Bangalore, where I use the word used by these smugglers, cooking. Where cooking happens, they manufacture it, like what doctor was saying, it's all pure chemical items mixed in a proper way to become a psychotropic item or a narcotic item. So when a 600 rupees item has been smuggled to Kerala, it becomes almost 10 times from what it was bought. So kids, what they do is, they go to Bangalore, they take drugs from there, bring it down to Kerala, and they sell it because there is a demand in Kerala. Kerala and Cochin is the second topmost consumers in MDMA. So that is the situation. So what is happening nowadays is, people think that only uniformed officers are supposed to prevent the use of drugs. It's not like that. We all have our own responsibilities as a citizen, as a teacher, as a principal, as a parent. We all, wherever we go to take classes, what we have been told is, see, the police is not working, the customs is not working, or the excise is not working, NCB is not working. It's not like that. We work on inputs from the society. If you don't want to reveal your name, you can just give a letter to an agency, and the agency is supposed to work. That is how we function. We work on informations. We are also officers, not different from you. We sit in offices. We go out only when we have an input. Yes, there are cases that we booked on surveillance or by luck. But in most of the cases, we work on inputs.
Thank you. One last question before I move on is, you're from outside the state, isn't it?
I'm from Calicut.
Oh, you're from Calicut, okay. He's a Malayali, okay. How do you think there's something in our psyche that is negative that contributes to kids, or is that everywhere else?
Sir, I can't differentiate a kid from a government school, an aided school, or a private school. Because like what Dr. Vivek was saying, we have come across cases where kids from all strata of life has also been caught. We have initiated cases to bring them back to life. That's a very tricky question. I can't, I can't blame the state for anything. We are people who enjoy a lot. Even if it is a birth, even if it is a death, we want to enjoy. But for me, I'll say that non-availability of some items is making, the demand for some items which is not that good for health. So I don't want to differentiate on that.
Thank you. There's one more question. I'm sorry, I'll put a last question to you. I was told when I was talking about this to others, they said the social media is where the kids get a lot of information, where these groups are formed. I spoke about it briefly there. So what is your take on that?
100%, sir. Like what you referred also, like after COVID, we have a number of cases booked by the customs in foreign post office, where the kids have ordered banned items, psychotropic substances from darknet. Darknet is not a website. It's all these sites from where the kids can order. We had almost 100 to 200 cases booked. Most of them were kids. In some of the cases, mother didn't know that her GPay account was used to send money. Only she came to know about the issue was when the excise department reached their house. And when the mother questioned the kid how he got the money from, was that he had deleted the message that comes after an amount has been transferred to the party. And the drugs was bought from the bank account of this mother. So COVID has played a major role. All the kids, we were forced to give them mobile phones. All of them are very well equipped. They know the sites. They are more aware of the items than us. In many schools, when we go, they educate us more about some of the sites. So we, like being in this department, coming across many internationally used drugs, 100% we have seen it. But in some cases, they are more aware than us. And they know the quantity and quality that they can order, or the punishments that they can get for possessing the drugs.
Before I move on to Mr. Gopakumar, there's this thing where when you spoke about the child using the mother's Google Pay, it occurs to me, where are the children getting the money from? Would anyone in the panel, including you, be able to tell us that?
So in this Google, like what I referred was actually money had to be transferred to this website. So mother's Google Pay account was used. In some cases, children take from their father's purse. We don't know the amount of money. If we don't know the amount of money that is there in our purse, the amount that has been taken by the kid is also unaware.
Oh, they become peddlers and make money. Anybody else on, Doctor, where do the kids get the money from? 8,000 is not a small amount, it's a big.
Yeah, so many a times it's from home, loose change which is available, sometimes transferred from their parents' Google Pay accounts, etc. Only when it becomes a large transaction do they get to know. And some of them, like, when I ask them, how do you get, my friends give me the drugs? It's all free. But after a particular point, it's not free and you become peddlers. So that's how the chain comes, and parents are oblivious to it. You really need to know what your child is doing, what he's who he's interacting with. But unfortunately, as usual, parents are last people to know, and they come to us only when it's a crisis.
That reminds me, my father was an economist. He used to write accounts. I think we should all begin that now to ensure that not our kids, but I think we should suggest that to parents, to ensure that money is not taken away from their wallets. Thank you so much. I'll move on to, before I come to the question and answer session, and then request Justice David Ramachandran to round up today's interesting discussion, but I'm sure you got a lot to say. I'll ask Mr. Gopakumar to say a few words before we move on.
Thank you. Actually, this program is for sports, not for drugs. Because if you start talking on drugs and how to prevent, it's a huge affair, much beyond our scope of meeting together. So BKRG and RSC will work now on sports. When you work on sports, the drugs will come down. That's the idea. So that's what we are trying to do. So one other thing is educate the mother and educate the parents and as well as the teachers the importance of sports. As good as your regular education. That's one thing we have to do. Some of them don't even understand what sports can do to a person. Then we'll have to do talent hunting in all the schools. What kind of sports can be generated, and the students may not have tried a sports. That's also there in government schools. There are a lot of sports. Normally they play football or maximum basketball. Other than that, they don't know what else is there in the field. So probably we'll have to do a talent hunting, giving facilities or taking them to RSC or taking to some sports ground to find out what are the sports possible for them. And also the government school facilities is something which you are looking forward with CSR fund. We have to improve the facilities. One of the things we tried is the swimming pools, which we are on, and to make every child learn swimming. That's a great project which will improve the health as well as save somebody else's life too. That's a very important part. And also there are different kinds of sports, that like you have rifle shooting, archery, skating, squash, sword, a lot of things. They are not even higher end schools are not exposed to these things. So we'll have to find out some method which these things are exposed, because India normally wins some prizes on all these fields in the National Olympics and all that. So we should do all this. So basically we'll concentrating on sports, by which we expect the drugs will come down.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gopakumar. I'll open this forum for questions. I'm sure you will have a lot. As Mr. Gopakumar said, this is about sports, preventing drug addiction. So we can stick to that. If you want to go a little beyond, I'm sure we can take questions. Justice Ramachandran has said he will also answer your questions, so I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions. I think there's somebody going around with a microphone, and you can either raise your hand. Identify yourself, tell us your name, where you come from, your background.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vinamoon Matthew, Principal, Cochin Refinery School. Thank you, first of all, for this opportunity to interact with such elite panel on this topic. Incidentally, I was talking to a friend of mine who actually helps youngsters into de-addiction. And my question is to Dr. Vivek, because he said that many a time the awareness programs we do in school can be counterproductive if you are actually describing the impact of these drugs to the children. For example, you explain that you inject the drug, then you have this hallucination, etc., etc. It could be a motivation rather than something which will not, which will keep them away from the drugs. So can you just share some light on this topic?
Yeah, so that's why I said in the very onset, the awareness classes and should be targeted on the parents, because I've been doing it for 11 years. So when I go to a school and talk to kids, half an hour is just a period gone for them, for entertainment, one. So that's why I started focusing more on parents and teachers so that we can pick the warning signs. Secondly, when we target kids, we don't talk to them about the highs and the great things you get, but we talk to them about the pros and cons and the long-term impact. Okay, short-term you may feel good, you may feel happy, you may feel creative. Like one movie director told me, I get creative when I use this, but after a particular point I was thinking whether it was the drugs or me being creative, and it was creating havoc in his life. Okay, so that's how it is. So we try to tell them on the bad effects, on how it is physically, mentally destroying your life than the other things. So we focus on the negative aspects and how that you can get a long-term impact on your life, which can totally derail your life. So such things work, but if it's done in the proper way.
And I suppose that is where what Mr. Gopakumar said comes true. Don't focus on the drugs. Focus on sports. I think that will take it away. Also, I mean, I remember when you watch TV, you see this advertisement on tobacco chewing, where there is this lady with her face eaten away. I think things like that can put off drug use as well. I mean, I'm not an expert, but the next question, anybody else?
I'm P.C. Siriak, a former civil servant and one of the founder members of...
So why are you sitting there? You should be here.
No, one of the founder members of BKRG. And, you know, Punjab was one of the states where youngsters addicted to drugs was a big problem. So last year, in a sensational election result, a new Aam Aadmi Party government came to power. So they were asking what exactly we should do to wean away the youngsters from this drug. So some of us suggested, drawing inspiration from the activities of the Mr. Navaz and others, some of us suggested that you develop the theme, you love your body, make your body beautiful, make your body healthy. This particular campaign, we requested, in fact, I was the state president of the Aam Aadmi Party here till about a month ago, so we got a chance to mention something like this. So I believe they included this, incorporated this idea also in their campaign. But I have not been able to follow up and find out whether this has been of any great effect. But generally, one feels that getting addicted to sports will be a very good remedy for this. But then once you become competitively involved in sports, then as you mentioned, perhaps you may be attracted to taking performance-enhancing drugs also. So you take, in the sports, winning and losing is okay. That type of easygoing spirit has to be imbibed into the children in particular thing. So I feel that the swimming pool campaign, as far as Kerala and Kochi are concerned, swimming is a life-saving skill. So swimming pool campaign has to be made more effective. Perhaps money is a problem, so the corporate funding could be made available for that. So I wonder whether some of you can campaign for the corporates to contribute their money and try to make this swimming pool campaign successful. Mr. Gopakumar and others were trying for that, but not even a single swimming pool has been constructed as part of this campaign so far. So some of you can perhaps promote that campaign. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siriak. I think that's a very valid point. Sports, when you take it to the competitive edge, might or can lead to the use of drugs, but let's hope not. Let's move on. The next question.
Hello, my name is Rahil. I'm a student of Global Public School. And my question is, again, on the topic of performance-enhancing drugs. Of course, like you had mentioned, sports does play a huge role in bettering all of our lives. But do you think that performance-enhancing drugs, of course, people take them in considering, okay, it'll help my physique, it'll help my performance. But it has negative effects, as we can see. And in this ever-evolving world where new innovations are created every day, do you think these performance-enhancing drugs could become something else in the future? Under the guise of improving your physique, could it do something else to the students who intake them? But, you know, of course, they would have no idea. And that, in turn, could set this whole thing off of addiction all over again.
That's a very interesting question. Who do you address it to, or anybody in the panel?
No, and everyone.
Anybody. I think a round of applause for the question would be in order.
Rahil, so glad that you spoke up. I'm waiting for the others to do that. Now, I'll shatter the first myth. The first and the most fundamental myth, we shatter it today. Drugs don't give you energy. Drugs don't give you pleasure. Drugs don't give you entertainment. And drugs definitely does not give you health. We shatter this myth today, and if you are able to do that, then the mission that we are on will be on track. And I'll just explain it slowly. I was actually hearing the principal also speak about this. If you tell your child that if you take drugs, you will feel good for the first few days or first few weeks, and then it will wither away. It sends a wrong message. I know that. This is because we have all gone through that phase. Rahel, we have all come your way. We were born at one point, and then we grew up to this age. It's not that I was born at 55. At your age or at an age below yours, you never think of the consequences. I used to ride my bike so recklessly. My father used to taunt me every day, and I would think that he was blabbering, and I was always right, because I never thought that I would have a fall until I had a fall. I was very lucky, perhaps for my parents more, that I came out unscathed. But one of my friends who also had a fall almost simultaneously had a major fallout. So when you tell a child that a drug can give you energy, as Mr. Joseph said, this is the biggest myth that we have to shatter. Please understand, when you take a drug, when you are in a party and you are dancing, you are no longer enjoying that dance. You are numbing your brain to believe that your body is allowing you to do what you do mechanically. And imagine, the next day you don't even remember the party, you don't remember the dance. Is that really enjoyment at all? It is not. What is meant by enjoyment? When you gather that impression, that experience, that entertainment for the rest of your life. Just imagine a party or a dance we go, you take a dose of this so-called drug that you apparently think will give you a kick, and then you doze off. You wake up a day later, 2 days later, 2 days of your life wiped away, and you think that is entertainment. And the biggest motivational myth that is added to this is a concept of recreational drugs. I've heard nothing more absurd than this. Recreational drugs, and it is sold. This is why I started if you remember the way I began my address. I said this is a problem with the society now. We are accepting certain things which we never ought to have accepted. This is the biggest problem. There were drugs when I was growing up, perhaps not this MDMA and all that, perhaps something else. We had marijuana, which was pretty common. I'll tell you that. I've had friends who have taken marijuana also, and I was aware of it, but I did not know the consequences either. One of them died. It's not a question of dying. I've said this in one of my other speeches which I address in Malayalam. It is not a question of dying. All of us will die one day. It is a manner of living. And believe me, the person I'm talking about spent 25 years of his life in hospitals before he died. He never had a life. All because he thought that drugs would give him life. Drugs can never give you life. It will snub it off. And it is not a case of how many years you live. You may live 100 years. What if you spend 70 years in a hospital? Is that life? That is not life. So we snuff that myth. And this is why I want the children also to understand. There can be never life with drugs. Never at all. And if you now turn to drugs, be that performance enhancing or otherwise, I'll deal with that also peripherally. Take it from me, you are in a course of suicide. You cannot live with drugs. Drugs will only kill you. And luckier ones may die quickly. The lucky ones will live for long and die excruciatingly. Please tell this to our children. The fallout, the consequences is something which is unimaginable. We had top performers. I don't want to take a name. One of the biggest names of the world in music industry. He died when he was 50. He died with a cocktail of 52 tablets in his stomach. He was the biggest and the most expensive performer ever in the world at any point of time. He lived up to 50, died of a cocktail of drugs, all because he had to have this performance enhancement. Is that really performance enhancement at all? You want to create muscles, you then take a drug or take all these things, I don't know what they call all this, the whey proteins or whatever you call it, and then graduate into a lot of other things. Eventually, maybe a few weeks, few months, few years down the line, you end up as a patient, never ever to regain. This is not performance-enhancing drugs. This is destruction, complete destruction. Never call it performance-enhancing drugs. Let's stop this nonsense. This is the problem. Children are told performance-enhancing drugs, as if you give it a legitimacy. You call it recreational drugs, you give it a legitimacy. Let's stop doing that. Let's make that call. Let it be an international call by this conference. Let us not embellish these drugs at all in any manner. Drugs are drugs. Whether they give you a high today or a high tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Because after all, for the young ladies sitting there, I don't know, men are also there, yes. I'm just telling you, drugs are generally into 3 categories. One is called a stimulant. If you're studying and you can't concentrate well, you take a drug down and you think it's stimulating you. It keeps you awake, it gives you. But then the next stage is the most dangerous thing. It is a depressant where you want to sleep. You have worked hard enough, you are not getting your sleep, and therefore you want to sleep. And then you take the same drug or another drug or a combination or a cocktail, and then you go to sleep. And then there's a third and the most dangerous part of it, the hallucinogens. So as the principal was saying, you take a drug, you fall into hallucination. That is not you, it is not your brain, it is not your experience. It is something else. It's something over which you have no control. And believe me, my dear young children, you are all younger enough to be my sons and daughters. What your brain cannot control is not life. What your brain cannot control is not an experience. And what your brain cannot control is certainly not happiness. It is only the feeling of all these. But the true feeling is when your brain is in control. That is why I said, if you create the same endorphins or the morphins and the cannabinoids in your body, which you can do by mere 10 minutes of walk, you get the same high, which does not give you any after effect, but gives you a great effect. Let's go for the great effect, not for the after effect. Let us not think that drug can make you dance all night. No, it does not really, because you do not know that you are dancing. It's something that you do mechanically. And then you endanger your muscles, your ligaments, everything. I've seen girls and boys, they collapse after endless amount of physical activity on drugs. Taken to hospital, and you ask them, what were you doing? They say, we don't know what we were doing. This is not entertainment. This is not happiness. Please tell your friends, this is not happiness. No drug can give you happiness. Drugs can only kill. Only life can give you happiness, and life and drugs cannot go together. This is absolutely sure. There is no doubt about it. You can also tell your friends, if you don't take drugs, you will be as tall as Vivek. And Vivek, I want your tailor's number. These are the role models that you require. And when we say, as Dr. Vivek was also saying, we don't drink and smoke, it's basically that we don't require a stimulant. I don't drink or smoke. I have never tried smoking or drinking. You don't require it. I've also been to parties when I was much younger, of course. Though I am not a good dancer either. I've got 2 left feet, or perhaps no left feet at all. But whatever. But the point simply is, I was the chauffeur for all my friends. I would be invited to all parties free. Designated chauffeur, I never spent to enter a party, because my friends would buy me a ticket so that I would drive them back home. I am a teetotaler. So there are small frills for being, teetotaler and all that. But jokes apart, believe me, there is no energy, there is no entertainment, there is no recreation on drugs. And let us not call these drugs performance enhancing for God's sake. Let us not call these drugs recreational drugs for God's sake. They are neither. They are just drugs. Drugs are drugs. Nothing more, nothing less. And that is the message we should give.
Wonderful.
Of course, drugs are drugs. And in a more prosaic, pragmatic manner, may I also point out something? Many famous sports people who have tried to use these steroids to perform better. All of them have been caught, banned for life. Yes, from Ben Johnson, and more recently, I think, 2 days back, we had in our newspapers, I'm not naming names, somebody from here who was banned from playing. So not only will you ruin yourself, imagine the shame and ignominy, because what you want to pursue also will be taken away from you forever. You have many famous tennis and Ben Johnson, Lance Armstrong, many of these people who were banned for a long number of years because they were found doping.
Ma'am, the fact is actually, if we can go for enhancing drugs, like nowadays, it's extremely strict before a competition and after a competition, a urine test is being done. So no sports person can perform on the base of any sort of enhancing drugs. The period has gone where you can use drugs and perform. That is not there. We have to perform. We have to practice daily. And if we have to practice daily, we can't skip our sleep and go into any sort of, using alcohol or drugs or anything like that. And after every sports event, we have to undergo a urine and a saliva test. In some cases, if they have a doubt, they'll have a blood test also. It's like that. So performance is totally cut. Thank you.
You got your answer, Rahil. There's nothing called a performance-enhancing drug. There's nothing called recreational drug. There's nothing called energy drugs. They're just drugs and they kill you. Send this message. Big round of applause once again, I think, for our... yes.
Namaste all. ഞാൻ ഷൈനി ബിനോയ് വിദ്യോദയ സ്കൂളിലെ കായിക അധ്യാപികയാണ്. സാർ, എനിക്ക് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ആയിട്ടല്ല, കുറച്ച് സജഷൻ ആൻഡ് സൊല്യൂഷൻസ് ആണ് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നത്. സാർ, കഴിഞ്ഞ വർഷത്തെ കണക്കനുസരിച്ച് 10-നും 17-നും ഇടയിൽ പ്രായമുള്ള കുട്ടികളുടെ ഡ്രഗ്സിൻ്റെ ഉപയോഗം എന്നത് 1.58 കോടിയാണ്. 58 കോടിയാണ്. സാർ, ഇതിൽ നിന്നൊരു മാറ്റം വരണമെങ്കിൽ നമ്മൾ ആദ്യമായി ചെയ്യേണ്ടത്, എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നത്, കുട്ടികളെ മുഴുവനായി നല്ല രീതിയിൽ ആക്റ്റീവായി നിർത്തുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അതിനായി ആദ്യം ചെയ്യേണ്ട ഒന്നാമത്തെ കാര്യം, കുട്ടികൾക്ക് പഠിക്കാനുള്ള സൗകര്യം നമ്മൾ ഏർപ്പാടാക്കി കൊടുക്കുക. അത് നമ്മളെല്ലാവരും ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു കാര്യമാണ്. അപ്പം മനസ്സിലാക്കണം, പ്രോബ്ലം അവിടെയല്ല. രണ്ടാമതായി ചെയ്യേണ്ടത്, പഠിക്കാൻ ഏർപ്പാടാക്കുന്ന സമയത്തോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ പ്രധാനമാണ് അവർക്ക് കളിക്കാനുള്ള സൗകര്യവും സമയവും അനുവദിച്ചു കൊടുക്കുക എന്നുള്ളത്. കളിക്കാൻ ഇഷ്ടമുള്ള കുട്ടിയെ പല കാരണങ്ങളാൽ നമ്മൾ മാറ്റി നിർത്താറുണ്ട്. പഠിക്കാൻ ഇഷ്ടമുള്ള കുട്ടികളെ എത്ര കഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടിട്ടാണെങ്കിലും നമ്മൾ അവരെ പഠിപ്പിച്ചെടുക്കാറുണ്ട്. എന്നാൽ കളിക്കാൻ ഇഷ്ടമുള്ള കുട്ടികളെ പ്രധാനമായും പഠനത്തിൻ്റെ പേരിലാണ് നമ്മൾ മാറ്റി നിർത്തപ്പെടുന്നത്. മാതാപിതാക്കളുടെ നിർബന്ധപ്രകാരം അധ്യാപകരായ ഞങ്ങൾക്കും പലപ്പോഴായി അത് ചെയ്തു വരാറുണ്ട്. എന്നാൽ നമ്മൾ മനസ്സിലാക്കേണ്ടത്, ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ സ്ട്രെസ്, ആങ്സൈറ്റി, ഡിപ്രഷൻ, ടെൻഷൻ ഇതെല്ലാം അവരനുഭവിക്കുന്നത് ഈ മാറ്റി പ്രധാനമായും 10th and 12th സ്റ്റാൻഡേർഡ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതുപോലെയുള്ള ഏതെങ്കിലും ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു കാര്യത്തിൻ്റെ പേരിലാണ് അവരെ സ്പോർട്സിൽ നിന്നും പാരൻസ് മാറ്റി നിർത്തുന്നത്. ആ ഒരു കാലഘട്ടത്താണ് ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ കുട്ടികൾ ഇതെല്ലാം അനുഭവിക്കുന്നത്. പിന്നീട് ഇഷ്ടപ്പെട്ട ഒരു കാര്യം ചെയ്യാൻ സ്വാതന്ത്ര്യമില്ലാതെ വരികയും ഇഷ്ടപ്പെടാത്തത് നിർബന്ധപൂർവം ചെയ്യുകയും ചെയ്യുമ്പോഴാണ് കുട്ടികൾ ആത്മഹത്യയെപ്പറ്റിയും മയക്കുമരുന്നിൻ്റെ ലോകത്തേക്കും ചേക്കേറുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ ഇവിടെ തീരുമാനങ്ങൾ തിരുത്തേണ്ടത് മാതാപിതാക്കളാണോ, അധ്യാപകരാണോ, കുട്ടികളാണോ? മൂന്നാമത്തെ കാര്യം, ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ കുട്ടികൾ മാതാപിതാക്കളുടെ പങ്ക്. ഈ ഒരു സമൂഹത്തിലെ ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ എല്ലാവരും ബിസിയാണ്. കുട്ടികൾക്കായി അവരുടെ പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ കേൾക്കാൻ, അവരുടെ ഇഷ്ടാനിഷ്ടങ്ങൾ മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ മാതാപിതാക്കൾക്ക് സമയമില്ല. അവരുടെ പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ കേൾക്കാനും അവരുടെ കൂടെ അല്പനേരം ഇരിക്കാനും പാരൻസ് സമയം കണ്ടെത്തുക. നാലാമത്തെ കാര്യം, ഏറ്റവും മാതാപിതാക്കളെ പോലെ തന്നെ പ്രധാനമാണ് അധ്യാപകരുടെ സ്ഥാനം. ഞാനതെൻ്റെ സ്കൂളിൻ്റെ ഉദാഹരണം വെച്ച് തന്നെ പറയാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നു. സ്കൂളിൽ പലപ്പോഴായി അവയർനെസ് ക്ലാസ്സുകൾ, ആൻറ്റി ഡ്രഗ് അവയർനെസ് ക്ലാസ്സുകൾ നടത്താറുണ്ട്. കഴിഞ്ഞ വർഷം ന്യൂആൽസിൻ്റെ കൊളാബറേഷനോട് കൂടി അവയർനെസ് ക്ലാസ്സുകൾ സംഘടിപ്പിച്ചു കുട്ടികൾക്കായിട്ട്. 2 സെഷൻ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അതിൻ്റെ ലീഗൽ സൈഡും മെഡിക്കൽ സൈഡും അവിടെ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യപ്പെടുകയുണ്ടായി. രണ്ടാമതായി ജൂൺ 26 ആൻറ്റി ഡ്രഗ്സ് ഡേയുടെ അനുബന്ധിച്ച് അസംബ്ലിയിൽ സ്പീച്ച്, ഫ്ലാഷ് മോബ്, പ്ലെഡ്ജ് തുടങ്ങിയ കാര്യങ്ങളെല്ലാം കുട്ടികൾക്കായിട്ട് സംഘടിപ്പിക്കുകയുണ്ടായി. മൂന്നാമതായി ഒരു രഹസ്യ കമ്മിറ്റി തന്നെ നമ്മൾ കുട്ടികളെ മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ സാധിക്കുന്നത് കുട്ടികൾക്ക് തന്നെയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ അവരിലെ മാറ്റങ്ങൾ ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ അറിയാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് കുട്ടികളിൽ നിന്ന് തന്നെ നമ്മൾ കുറച്ച് പേരെ സെലക്ട് ചെയ്ത് വെക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. പിന്നെ അത് മാത്രമല്ല, ഏറ്റവും അവസാനമായി ജൂലൈ 1 വിവേക് സാറിൻ്റെയും നവാസ് സാറിൻ്റെയും നേതൃത്വത്തിൽ മുക്തി എന്ന പേരിൽ നമ്മൾ പാരൻസിനായിട്ട് ഒരു വർക്ക്ഷോപ്പ്, ആൻറ്റി ഡ്രഗ്സിൻ്റെ വർക്ക്ഷോപ്പ് സംഘടിപ്പിക്കുകയുണ്ടായി. അതിൽ പാരൻസിൻ്റെ ചോദ്യങ്ങൾക്ക് ഉത്തരങ്ങൾ നൽകുന്നതിനായി പ്രമുഖരായ കുറേ പേരുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. നവാസ് സാറും വിവേക് സാറുമാണ് അത് ലീഡ് ചെയ്തത്. ഇങ്ങനെ മാതാപിതാക്കളുടെയും അധ്യാപകരുടെയും കൂട്ടായ ശ്രമത്തിലൂടെ നമുക്ക് കുട്ടികളെ മയക്കുമരുന്നിൻ്റെ ലോകത്തേക്ക് നിയന്ത്രിക്കാം. സേ യെസ് ടു സ്പോർട്സ് ആൻഡ് സേ നോ ടു ഡ്രഗ്സ്. താങ്ക് യു.
ഷൈനി ബിനോയ്, താങ്ക് യു വെരി മച്ച്. വളരെ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട നിർദ്ദേശങ്ങളാണ് ഷൈനി തന്നത്. ഞാൻ ആവർത്തിക്കുന്നില്ല. പക്ഷേ അധ്യാപകർക്കും മാതാപിതാക്കൾക്കുമുള്ള അവരുടെ ഇതിനകത്തുള്ള പങ്ക് ഒരിക്കലും കുറയ്ക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല. അടുത്ത തവണ റീജിയണൽ സ്പോർട്സ് സെൻറ്റർ വല്ലതും സംഘടിപ്പിക്കുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ മാതാപിതാക്കളെയും കൊണ്ടുവരണം, പേരൻസ് ടീച്ചേഴ്സ് അസോസിയേഷൻ കൊണ്ടുവരണം എന്നൊരു അഭ്യർത്ഥന എനിക്കുണ്ട്. ദേ ഹാവ് എ ട്രമെൻഡസ്ലി വൈറ്റൽ റോൾ ടു പ്ലേ. ഇവിടെ ഈ സൈഡിലും ലാസ്റ്റ് കപ്പിൾ ഓഫ് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് ആൻഡ് ദെൻ ഐ ആസ്ക് ജസ്റ്റിസ് ടു wind up the discussions.
Hi, I'm JP Premlal, a chartered engineer by profession and a member of Better Kochi Response Group. And we, along with the Regional Sports Center, is going out in a big way to promote sports, get it into the minds of children, and keep them away from drugs. But my point today is, and my question towards is that now drugs are seen, all drugs are seen as in the same manner. So there are mild drugs, there are very severe drugs, there are chemicals that have conquered the children. I mean, like you said, they are psychotropic drugs. They turn you into zombies. They don't know what they are at the end of the day, so they go and do out heinous acts. But there are mild forms of drugs, like say for the marijuana thing, which I think that probably how to, and before going to say what I wanted to say, let me point out that it's already spread in the community like cancer. So we are talking about awareness, we are talking about making the children away from it, but at the same time, it has spread around like cancer in the society. And not only children, elders, even aged people are getting succumbed to that habit. So what could be the way to contain the use of drugs? So where I'm trying to get is it possible in a way to legalize, like in most of the developed countries, they have taken a point where they legalize, like for example, marijuana, to keep it to a limit that a person with a certain amount can have it. Because even if you are an alcoholic and even if you take drinks, consuming a bottle of liquor is equivalent to being, going out of your mind or doing things that you are not even aware of in the next day. Therefore, when everything is put into one stage and the news, the media never comes out with catching any of these large-scale halls or containments of these chemical drugs. But every day we hear that ganja is caught. So there is a mild, under the guise of ganja, even cocaine is available at your doorstep. So would legalizing some drugs to some extent help the society?
Thank you so much. That's a question. I think the right person to answer the question would be the legal luminary amongst us. I'll hand over the mic to Justice Ramachandran.
This is the next myth that we have to shatter. Good that you asked. We are not legalizing any substance because it is good. If any country has legalized marijuana or any other, it is not because of an affirmation that it is good. It is knowing fully well that it is deleterious, but to contain certain other social evils, that you balance it and therefore contain it and thus legalize it. It is like legalizing, I'm sorry, I know that girls and boys are here. It is like legalizing prostitution. It is not because it is good. It is to say the ladies in the trade that we legalize it. We have legalized marijuana some places of the world. It is not because marijuana is a panacea. It is because if you legalize marijuana, the associated social evils like violence and those kind of things may come down. So legalizing is not for the purpose of affirmation of its goodness or otherwise. Legalizing has got another reason altogether completely. But then, now that you asked this, there is another thing which I thought I must really address. Is that there are two ways of tackling this issue. One is from the outside and one from the inside. From the outside, as parents, as teachers, you can always, as Mrs. Ramachandran was saying, watch them, surveil them, keep a tab on what they're doing. As Dr. Vivek said, look what they're doing, watch what they're doing. That won't be very effective. Because please understand that the generations are changing. What will be more effective would be to tell the child not to take drugs and to make the child understand why not to take drugs. It is that movement from within, because as long as you tell them that we believe this is good for you, this is the age where they are non-conformist, this is the age where they rebel without cause, which we also went through. So if you tell them, don't take drugs because I think that it is bad for you, they are not going to go for it. This is the biggest problem that teachers and parents will face. As the young lady was also saying, she was absolutely right actually. There are limits to what a parent or a teacher can do beyond a particular boundary. And unfortunately for us, we don't understand that boundary until we reach it. It is for the child to be told, I would say from the kindergarten or even lower, how dangerous it is to be addicted, except to something like sports. We have to create that culture, and that is an ongoing process. Mr. Joseph was asking, where do you get the drugs? Don't even think about it. You can't stop it anymore. Take it from me. I'm sure Vivek agrees with me. We've all tried our best. Imagine when we stopped alcohol, did it stop? It gave rise to various other problems, which Vivek did not want to say. So one source or the other, as long as somebody wants something, they will get it. I'll tell you the last of the myths which I wanted to tell you. The biggest addictions are not really of drugs alone. Cigarettes and alcohol. Why are we not addressing that? How do you think that cigarettes are less addictive or alcohol is less addictive? They are also drugs, perhaps not psychotropic, and therefore, exactly what I told you earlier. We are not controlling cigarettes or alcohol because controlling that will create a greater social evil. So we are just balancing it. I don't think anybody in the right senses would ever say that smoking and drinking is good. And very interestingly, I'll tell you one incident. On the cigarette cover, there was that picture of a lady or a man with a canker and a horrific picture. Litigations were filed saying that remove them. Because it is very unnerving for a person, a consumer of cigarette, to keep this packet of cigarette after paying for it. So it's a consumer protection. He said, no, remove that because it is unnerving me. So if you want something, that man did not really fall for that picture. He found that picture to be annoying. He was not scared. That's a problem. Particularly in drugs among children, they don't understand the consequences. It takes a long time for them to understand the consequences. By then it is absolutely too late. So teachers and parents, we have to be role models. If you believe that the present generation is slipped to an ebb, if you believe so, please blame yourself. We are to blame. As Mr. Joseph said, the generational gaps are coming down. So we are to blame. We were perhaps not greater role models as our parents were to us. We have to change now. Let us do that. That should be the motto. And as far as children are concerned, allow them to be good children, allow them to be good individuals by motivating them from the inside. They should be told, they should be made aware as to the consequence of all these actions.
Navaz, I just wanted to introduce myself. In continuation of Honorable Justice conclusion, I think it's conclusion from Honorable Justice, and in reply to Mr. Premlal, why Regional Sports Center took up this cause seriously is because if you are into sports, you will not think about drugs. So I think that answers his questions. There's no point in legalizing portion of the drugs, quantifying it as more serious and less serious. No, when you are into sports, you will not think about drugs, you will not think about alcoholism, not think about smoking, forget about internet and even your mobile phone. Because when you play at a very young age, then unknowingly, you will want to play every day, then unknowingly you will be into competition, then you want to practice. You're crazy about your game, you forget about the rest. And like Honorable Justice rightly said, you get a kick out of it. You enjoy, you get intoxicated, if you want to put that word out also. So sports is the right answer for us. Most of the time, people are thinking about treatment, rehabilitation, and some are scared about the punishment. Let us think about this preventive measure, which we never come across because you don't think about drugs. Because at a very young age, you are into sports. So that's where all the parents and the teachers, the schools have to play a role. They will have to motivate the children to participate in sports. Where we come in, we have a wonderful sports center. We have 33 events, world-class facilities. We will take the talented children and train them further to be maybe national champions or world champions. But basically, primarily, get addicted to sports and not to drugs. And if you're addicted to sports, you will not think about drugs. That's what RSC wants to communicate to this world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very nice way to end this morning's discussion on how addiction to sports can bring down addiction to drugs. I think we had a wonderful panel led by Justice Devan Ramachandran. He gave us a keynote talk and two powerful interventions in between, which I think shattered a lot of myths that we have, that we can go half the way and the other half will take care of itself. Or that you can name drugs in ways that make it attractive to all of us. He blasted it right into our face. So I think we owe a big, big round of applause to all our panelists, especially I think we've been a very fortunate generation. Our parents, my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, your parents, your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, and generations beyond that, sacrificed so much to bring us here. If you're sitting in such a comfortable room, if you're able to speak to each other, if you enjoy the best of the convenience we can ever think of, that's because of all the sacrifices they did and gave us a beautiful new world. I think we owe it to our children to owe them an even better world, or at least pass on our world as we bequeathed it from our parents without spoiling it to them. And drugs will come in the way of that. We owe to our children to give them a world which we bequeath from our parents. We cannot have a situation where we bequeath them something that is even one iota less than what we received, and drugs will stand in the way. So thank you all very much. You've been an extremely patient audience, a lovely audience. I'm sure you have a lot of other questions to ask. Thank you once again. Thank you all.
The pleasure was ours. Thank you so much. We had a very, very productive discussion. We had a very fruitful exchange of ideas. And in short, this conclave was quite constructive. So what I learned from this is drugs are drugs. Drugs are drugs. So let's put the stash in the trash and choose life over drugs. One huge round of applause for our moderator, Mr. mpjoseph IAS, and all the panelists who participated.